Hey, Dragon Ball fans, this is another thrilling installment of Dragon Ball Rewatch here on CBR as we go through all things Dragon Ball, starting with the original series that premiered in 1986. This is your, one of your hosts, Sam Stone.
I'm Alex Maglio.
And I'm John Greenall.
As a reminder, you can watch along. Dragon Ball is available to stream on Crunchyroll and Hulu. Today we're talking about the fourth episode, Oolong the Terrible. We're kind of in this period where just the episodes are named after whatever new character they introduce. And this week it's all about that shape-shifting Porky Pig wannabe Oolong. But yeah,
Before we get in,
yeah.
before we
Oh,
get into
yes.
Porky
Before
Pig,
we get
though,
into this, if you were watching last week, you will have. We ended on trying to work out how many times Goku was actually wished on the Dragon Balls. This went after the episode finished recording as well. We were trying to work it out because it's less than you would think. So I have gone through and tried to find every wish I can. So we're going to do a quick moment of Dragon Ball trivia. So across the anime, manga, and movies, not including games, theme park attractions, or stage shows, of the 74 wishes I could find, both of you, how many times do you think Goku has been the one to say the wish? He has to say it.
I'm going to say two times.
And Sam?
I'm gonna go with 0.
Oh, either 5, 6, or 7, depending how you count them. He does it
Hmm.
twice in Dragon Ball, once in Path to Power. He technically does it once at the end of GT, though he doesn't have the Dragon Balls when he does it. Shenron summons themselves.
Yeah.
Depends how you count that. He does it in Wrath of the Dragon. He says he's going to do it, but you never see him do it. But the fact the world isn't destroyed implies he did. In the Dragon Ball Super Special Edition bonus content, he makes another one. And the final one he made was during the Golden Frieza saga. So, yeah, 5 to 7, depending how you define a wish.
You know what? I'm glad that we uncovered this mystery. But speaking of Dragon Balls, we're on to our fifth Dragon Ball now, I think.
Yeah, we're going through them at a rate.
Yeah, fourth episode, fifth Dragon Ball. Yeah, it's kind of wild at this point. It's like, oh, what character are we meeting that doesn't have a Dragon Ball in their possession? We'll find that out next week. But but right now, yeah, I mean, this random village, and if you're reading along in the manga, which is available through Viz Media, at least the English translation, this adapts. This is actually a pretty faithful adaptation of 2 chapters from the manga. Yeah, you'll find out that this village also has Dragon Ball in their possession.
We got to talk about this village really quick. This odd, especially because in the dub, there's this odd mix of like, you have this Native American thing, and I've lived in New York my whole life, and there's just this very odd New York Jewish thing that's going on in this village.
This is not a good episode if you like respectful portrayals of First Nations peoples, I will say. I do love the villager voices, though, because it totally is the voice actors going, well, I've got to do these extra characters, should get some regional accents for the old demo reel,
And
show
then
off
you've
my
got
range.
this one Australian guy who like pipes up halfway through when they have that little intro, but the Hokawatha's dad, I think, was the one that kind of hit me the hardest because he kind of talks like my dad. So
I mean, it's just like what I find fascinating is watching the Funimation slash Crunchyroll dubs, what accent, because they employ accents quite often. I assume, like John was saying, because yeah, we only have a limited number of voice actors and lots of ancillary characters. And frankly, the dubs kind of make the stereotypical depictions worse. But yeah, it is kind of a hodgepodge of a community. It's a melting pot of a community.
just like New
it
York.
it does help it does help sort of make them feel a bit less weird, I guess, because trying to get them all to have one accent, I think, would kind of be immersion breaking. So it does kind of balance it, but yeah, some of the accents verge a little too on the comedic for my tastes. There's a couple of them that are the most guy from the office doing a voice.
Yeah.
Like, I think for me, it's just like when I heard her dad and he was like, he's gonna take my daughter. Like that is how my dad talks, and I felt it in my heart. I was like, oh, Dad, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's such an interesting thing, especially because later on we get through Dragon Ball. It's just gonna turn into the Chris Sabat show. No offense to Chris Sabat, we love you, but
Yeah,
What was your first memory of Oolong? Because for me, he doesn't show up that much in Z. And so I remember watching like Toonami And I remember watching Tree of Might, and he shows up, he goes camping with the Z Fighters at the beginning of Tree of Might. I'm like, who the hell is this? Like, what is this like shape-shifting pig creature?
So I'm having a moment because when rewatching this episode for this, I realized I have zero memory of this episode at the time. So I'm not sure if this was cut from maybe UK broadcast or they just never showed it. Because I just remember Oolong appearing. The next couple of episodes have a few bits where my memory of seeing as a kid isn't lining up with what I'm watching now. So I'm not sure if that's a sign I should see a doctor or there was some weirdness with the dub. But yeah, I had no memory of Oolong being this child stealer, I guess.
Like, that's the thing I think we kind of have to talk about, where he's taking these like child brides from this village.
Yeah.
Like,
What I like about it, he's taking them, and then so for the plot, spoiler alert, the ending is they go to his temple, which has the most 80s interior in the world, and he's annoyed because they're not doing wife things for him; they're just demanding stuff off him, which for the time is a bizarrely progressive joke.
Well, and it's a gag that exists even in the original translation and in the manga. The implication is like, oh, this despicable pig, and he does more despicable things as the series goes. But the that he's coercing this village to give them their daughters, and then you find out he's just a harried person that is extorting them at a certain point because he's like, they're just running me ragged, guys. They're just running me ragged.
But it's
take
like
these
the way
women.
to solve my problem is more wives. Surely, pattern recognition here, Oolong. The plan is to have less wives.
Like, it's such a weird way that this is set up, because like I do love that we get like Bulma and Goku run into this ghost town, and Goku's like, no, there are definitely people here, and they're saving this village, even though Oolong isn't really strong or anything. He can just and the we got to talk about the robot that he turns into, and all of the weird accents that Oolong gives the things he turns into, and then when he turns into Tom Selleck, like all of these are all very
Oh,
weird
yeah,
looks.
he transforms.
He's
Yeah,
just Tom Selleck. Like, can we agree?
he's Tom Selleck or like Yakuza Walt Disney.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've looked into this. I was like, that's got to be a reference to someone because it's done in far too much detail. I can find no record of anyone working out who that is. I'm not sure if it's because maybe it's a Japanese TV star I've never seen, but I found no one who seems to know who that was meant to be. But it looks so specific to be a reference. My
Sure.
personal favorite is when he turns into the bull and does what I believe is meant to be a Scarface Spanish Cuban accent,
I mean,
but
he
turns
starts
into a
speaking in Spanish too.
but he turns into but it's meant to be, I think it's meant to be Scarface again, but it ends up becoming this weird love child of Pepe the King Prawn and Razor Ramon, which
Yeah.
is
I
like
what a deep cut reference that is.
that will, yes. But it's that kind of that weird broken Cuban thing going on, which I don't fully understand.
I also like that he, like Pilaf and Pilaf's associates, he continues Toriyama's penchant for food-based antagonists because he's initially an antagonist,
Yeah.
Oolong Tea, which kind of heightens the Journey to the West connection right there. But yeah,
Yeah,
no,
he's
he's kind of, I mean, he does transform into the robot in the manga as well. It's You get to see all kinds of weird things that we haven't really seen so far in
Yeah.
Dragon.
he also breaks the fourth wall, which
Yeah.
is the
Oolong
first time
straight up
we see
tells
that.
us
It's
straight
also
up tells us about transforming school.
yeah. It's also the first episode we get since the start of the series without Pilaf and his associates at all,
That's
because
right.
it's just the Oolong show all the time.
Which I'm going to be amazed. If I was a kid watching this week to week, I would presume the fact that Pilaf wasn't in this episode means that Roshi did kill them.
Yes.
Because
Yeah, they
the
did.
last thing we saw, Roshi was sinking them, and then they're not in this episode. So kid
That
may be
would be
like,
the
well, they're
natural
dead.
conclusion.
Yeah. So
Just Roshi chalk drawing some lines on his house to count the kid.
we get a recurring gag from episode 2 as well, the idea of Goku touching women to see the women. And
I'm, yeah.
yeah, it doesn't
We
age well. We've
we got to bring up the sign that says, "Hey, some of this didn't age well."
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, a
this is
lot
the
of it.
point that joke burnt out for me because they do it twice in really quick succession with Pocahontas, then the old woman, and it's like, well, you just killed the joke doing it
Well,
because they're the same gag. You can't just do it twice in 5 minutes.
first time it happens has one of my favorite payoffs. Not the joke itself, but like the crab walk, the extended crab walk that Bulma does just to punch Goku in the head. I was just like, what is this?
I was the next though. Bulma's animations in the next like little streak are so good. To be
Yeah.
fair, Tiffany Volmer, I would argue this is the episode where she kind of you get the feeling she has understood Bulma now. She knows the character and is going full force. I think this is sort of the episode where Bulma becomes the Bulma we know. Like just
Yeah.
totally, I love all how she throws tantrums and they give her a different animation style for them. It's so fun.
I also really love when we get that little moment where Oolong is Tom. I'm just going to call it Tom Selleck. When Oolong is Tom Selleck and she pops out and she's like, and like blows Goku's cover completely after declaring herself the brains of the outfit. And then Goku's like, Goku even before that is like, man, next time I get to come up with a plan.
I mean, to be fair, against Goku, you are the brains of the outfit. The
Goku seems to disagree.
bar is low. That does lead to the other weird gag of the episode where she reveals that she's a girl by pulling her top open, her jacket open, her t-shirt. And then Tom Selleck, Oolong starts flapping his arms to imagine he's in her breasts, which you've got to think he's doing that because you see him doing that before we go to the fantasy scene. So there's a good 3 minutes in universe where he's just standing there waving his arms and Bulma's just like, okay.
I mean, that's consistent with what we see with Roshi later when he's just off like nose bleeding and fantasizing about, various women.
I will say there is a really good gag in this episode, which I love, and that is very early in the episode. Goku gets into the house by punching a hole in the door, and obviously Bulma goes, "Oh, why didn't you use the knob?" But then if you watch the rest of the episode, everyone else who comes into the house also uses the hole,
Yeah.
which is such a nice little. In most sort of animation series, that hole would be gone by the next scene, just wouldn't be there. So the fact they keep it in all the shots and you see other characters using it is so cool and such a nice little detail.
Yeah.
That is a good detail. I didn't even notice that last time, but yeah, no, it's a great detail. I think the thing that I really enjoy about this episode truly is Oolong's transformations. I think that there is something very fun about the imagination that goes into that, especially when we get to the ramen robot. And I don't know if that's a reference to like a mascot or a Tokusentai show that I don't know about, but I love that robot. A few of them.
It's a good robot.
What do we think of Oolong overall? Like actual, like this character, because this really is his spotlight. He really does, especially that second half of the episode. It is all Oolong all the time.
In this episode, I don't mind him. He'll become. I think there is part of me that feels he becomes a bit extraneous later. But in this moment, he's a fun one-shot little villain. I do quite like how they it gives Goku someone to fight against a bit here, and sort of is a nice ease-in to show, because we haven't really seen how strong Goku is or how he fights very much yet. So this is a nice sort of showcase for that, and it's sort of building up that Pilaf fight off in the distance to sort of, here's our power levels we're working with. So I quite like it.
I like the existence of Oolong because it kind of points to a theme that's going to come with a bunch of Goku's villains, where there is like a certain power to them, there's a certain quirk to them, but they all are doing their best to outsmart Goku, because Oolong is doing that whole thing with the bricks to try to psych him out, and then that's clearly not working. So there's this history with Goku of his villains trying to psych him out, and Goku either being too strong or too stupid to know what's going on, and just pushing through that and driving them nuts. And I'm excited to see how that trend continues as we go on.
And the nice thing about the bricks as well, it does set up quite a nice gag for the next episode, with even with the soup as well, sets up a quite fun little idea, which isn't definitely the first time I've seen it, but we'll get to that next episode. But I was really happy when that paid off.
Yeah. It is also like in terms of like talking power levels, it is still a bit inconsistent, right? Like we've seen Goku take bullet shots at this point blank range. Here he's almost incapacitated by an axe to the head. I mean, to comedic, it's slapstick, so it's played more for laughs than like, oh, this is what he can handle. And also how fast Oolong is compared to the Nimbus Cloud, which we've accepted at this point that the Nimbus is hella fast, and the fact that he can stay ahead of the Nimbus for his, and we now know the rules of Oolong's transformation, up to 5 minutes, no more than 5 minutes in a single form.
He's working on Ultraman rules.
Yeah. So, but the fact he can stay in pursuit for 5 minutes ahead of Goku is pretty impressive for
Oh,
old.
also, to point out that there is a chase scene we have in this episode, and it's so nicely animated.
Yeah, it's
Just such a
gorgeous.
nice little. This whole episode, I would argue, is worth it for that scene, just because it's so fun. And I love the sound design for Nimbus.
Mhm.
It's kind of cutesy, but it's really satisfying. It's such a nice sound.
I think the other thing that I do have to kind of say poor Goku for this episode because there's a good chunk of this episode where like Goku is he just wants to do the right thing and we're putting Goku in a dress and we're going to try and get him kidnapped by the child napper. Let's remember the child napper
Yeah.
that
Remember the
Bulma is straight up
kidnappers.
being like sacrificial child.
Yeah.
Uh Poor Goku is spending this whole episode being like, guys, I don't know, I can't I just punch him really hard? And then he gets to punch him really hard.
Yeah. I
Uh,
mean, I think we're starting to see is the shocker, shocker. The more you stick to Toriyama's text, the better the episodes tend to be. And this is
Yeah.
kind of a prime example of that, really.
Definitely is like for all we can say about like how things have dated over the years, there is a certain joy for these early episodes of how unabashedly Toriyama they are. This is a man you can tell he likes certain things, he likes certain gags, and you are going to get those certain gags. There is no like committee here who are sort of trying to work out the best way to make them go viral. It is I find this funny and you will enjoy them or find you will keep finding them funny and they will keep appearing like this. And I kind of like that in this modern age of sort of committee design. It's nice.
I I do really love the little joke with Goku when, Bulma comes out and then he has to pee. And when Oolong comes to the side and then Goku's like, "Oh, how did you figure it out? Is it because of my tail?" And it's like, not exactly,
Yeah,
Goku.
buddy. Oh, buddy. Oh, buddy. You
Oh,
innocent.
pal. And Oolong, I think, plays off of Goku very well. I think that they have a really good comedic energy together because Oolong is supposed to be that like wisecracking, like sleazy like con artist, and Goku is just kind of so immune to that it makes their comedic energy work very well together.
I,
Goku's voice actress does such a good job with some of these deliveries. There's a line about I learned karate from my grandpa, and
yeah.
it's delivered with such purity it becomes hilarious.
Yeah. Stephanie does a good job. Stephanie Nadolny. I will say, like, they're still figuring Oolong out after this episode. After Roshi becomes more prominent, they kind of play down the more villainous, sleazier elements of Oolong. He's still a pervert, but he's not like there. We get to some stuff where it's like, what? Why is this here? But right now, like, but for a debut, this is a really strong one from Oolong. I always like it when the Dragon Ball characters show up in the later series, like Z and GT and Super. And so, Oolong is a part of that. And even if it took me until seeing Tree of Might to finally get introduced to this guy. Do we? Well, yeah. What's up?
I think also is that Bulma and Oolong are the beginning of the pattern that Goku creates, where it's like the friends he makes along the way all tried to kill him at some point.
Yes. Yes. Sometimes even after they're good friends with him.
Yeah,
Oftentimes, actually.
it explains Vegeta down the line.
Yes. And Piccolo.
Like Goku's had his grandpa died. The next person he met tried to shoot him. Oolong tried to stab him. Like you realize why he's just so forgiving at this point. He just accepts it as normal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like this is just how Goku makes friends.
Yeah, it's through repetition he's developed this behavior. But does anybody have any last thoughts on Oolong the Terrible before we sign off for the week?
I have a question: is why does Oolong dress like a Chinese revolutionary soldier? I've never understood this. Never found any sort of reasoning for it. But he looks very Chairman Mao, and I'm unsure if this is Toriyama having a slight dig or if there's some bizarre joke maybe there's a regional joke I'm missing. But it's all even when since I was a kid, it's always bugged me why he dresses like this.
Yeah, with a red star. I assume that's it. I mean, one, he's meant to, it's another nod to Journey of the West, but he is another analog character for that main ensemble, if you ever read the Chinese folklore.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of wearing a Maoist uniform, I assume it's just like, let's just have fun.
I mean, I think
one more.
actually, if I'm gonna just kind of point this out, I think the interesting about the Maoist uniform is that he lives in something that is like an imperial palace, which I think it makes it even kind of funnier that he dresses that way if you historically, especially it's like, oh, you got this very plain outfit, and then all of a sudden you're living in Heaven Official's blessing. You know what I mean? Like,
Also, one other point I want to bring up is this is a rare example of a sort of a comedy piece ending with a literal "take my wife" joke.
yeah.
Very usually it's figurative. This is the only time I've seen this joke end with the literal version. So Rodney Dangerfield was beaten to the punch by Toriyama, which is a sentence I believe no one has said before.
No respect, no respect.
No respect for Oolong.
But yeah, I mean, another banger from Dragon Ball, I think. And next week we'll be covering the fifth episode, Yamcha the Desert Bandit. This has been another installment of Dragon Ball Rewatch. Again, you can watch along on Crunchyroll and Hulu if you want to stream the series.
We'll see you next time on Dragon Ball.